Alright, so in this video we're going to keep going with sequences and just kind of building up to where we need to go. So the next part you need to know is what we call a common difference or a common ratio. So common difference we note as little lowercase d because for difference, and then common ratio we use a lowercase little r. A common difference is the number that you add or subtract each time to get to the next term. And since it's called a common difference, that means it's the same number every time. This goes back to the last video about arithmetic versus geometric sequences. If you're adding or subtracting, it's arithmetic, so this common difference goes with arithmetic sequences. Likewise, common ratio then must go with the geometric sequence, and if you read the definition of common ratio, it goes along with it. It's the number you multiply or divide by each time to get the next term, and again, since it says common ratio, it's the same number every time, which we talked about already. So the R needs to be in terms of multiplication, not division, though. So, for instance, and we'll look at some of these, if you're dividing, or if you're viewing it as dividing to get to the next term, you need to turn that division into an actual multiplication statement in order to do these. Alright, so remember common ratio, the R, this needs to be as multiplication like I said. So in this example, you are dividing by 4. I agree, I wrote divide by 4 myself, but if you put R equals 4 for the common ratio, then you're going to be wrong, because to people in the math world, when they see R equals 4, R implies multiplication. So they are going to think you're trying to tell them to get from 16 to 4, you have to multiply by 4, and that is not the case. You need to divide by 4. But it's real simple to turn multiplying that way. So if we want to divide by 4, that's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, 1/4. So R would need to be 1 over 4 here. So be careful with the R's. These won't have any problems. Alright, so again, to make this connection, arithmetic sequences are when you're adding or subtracting the same number every time, and those go with common difference. So think difference, we're subtracting. That's one of your options, add, subtract. And then geometrics, when you multiply, divide, you have a common ratio. Think about what a ratio is. It can be written as a fraction, which is also how division is written. Alright, so make some connections here. So let's try these. To get from one term to the next, we need to decide what we're doing. So this looks like maybe add 5 or times 6. Well, if you multiply by 6, the second step's not going to work. So this must be a plus 5 if it's going to work. And those do work. So since you are adding each time the same number, there is an arithmetic sequence here. Arithmetic, sorry. And that means we're going to use common difference, and it's going to be the number that we used every time, 5. Alright, this one, to get from one number to the next, you could say you're adding 3, but that's not going to work at this second arrow, so we need to times by 2. So if we're multiplying, this is geometric, which means we're going to use common ratio, and implied multiplication, which we already have, would be 2. Alright, so here's your practice. Go ahead and pause it, and there's the questions I want you to answer. I want you to know if it's arithmetic, geometric, or neither, and then if it is arithmetic or geometric, identify the common ratio or common difference appropriately. So pause the video and come back in just a minute to get the answers. Alright, here's number 1. You're adding 10 each time, and since you're adding 10 over and over, it's a common difference. So D equals 10, that means it's arithmetic as well. Number 2, you're dividing by 12 each time, but again, do not put R equals 12. That implies multiplication. So in order to imply correctly that you are dividing by 12, you need to multiply by the reciprocal, 1/12. Which again means it's geometric, since you are multiplying or dividing to get to the next term. Number 3, the last one, you are adding 3 first, then you're adding 5, then you're adding 7. We already looked at this sequence too. We know it's not going to be multiplying by any number either. So there actually is a pattern here like we talked about before. But it's neither arithmetic nor geometric, so you're not going to have a common difference or a common ratio, which means you're not going to have a special type of sequence that we are talking about this year. So this is a valid sequence. There is a pattern here. We already talked about the pattern. The next one's 25 and then 36. but this is not a pattern that's going to help us this year as far as doing arithmetic and geometric stuff. So until next time, keep practicing.